The first time Colonel Amar Kate had been shown the room, he had expected something grandiose, perhaps a space befitting the conspiratorial whispers that circulated among palace staff about the mysterious red door at the end of the West Wing service corridor. The reality was both more mundane and more extraordinary. $1.4 billion. That was the Chinese government's initial offer for the new element discovered in Burkina Faso. Then the United States came in with $2.7 billion. Russia extended a $3.5 billion proposal. Within a week, the figure had reached $12 billion, and the phones wouldn't stop ringing. As Traoré watched the world powers greed, he smiled. None of them understood the true value of Burkinium. This element wasn't just a mineral. It was a force that would redistribute the cards in energy, information technology, and defense industries. And Traoré was preparing an entirely different plan for sharing this power. Ibrahim Traoré stared at the small glass vial on his desk, studying the iridescent blue crystals inside. They looked almost ordinary, similar to copper sulfate crystals from a high school chemistry experiment. Yet, they represented perhaps the most significant scientific discovery of the century, a discovery that had thrust his small landlocked West African nation into the center of global geopolitics. 3 months earlier, Dr. Fatoum Arago, a brilliant material scientist who had returned to Burkina Faso after completing her doctorate at MIT, had been conducting routine geological surveys in the remote northern region near the Mali border. What she found in an abandoned colonial-era copper mine had initially seemed like an anomaly, unusual crystal formations that didn't match known mineral compositions. Further testing revealed something extraordinary, a previously unknown element. With atomic number 119, a superheavy element beyond the current boundaries of the periodic table. More remarkable than its mere existence were its properties. Stable at room temperature with unprecedented capabilities in electrical conductivity, energy storage, and quantum interactions. The implications were staggering. An element that could revolutionize everything from battery technology to computing, from energy transmission to material science. An element that, unlike many theoretical superheavy elements created in laboratories, existed naturally and could be extracted in commercially viable quantities. Dr. Ouedraogo had immediately contacted President Traoré, bypassing normal bureaucratic channels due to the sensitivity of her discovery. Traoré, with his military background and strategic mindset, had grasped the significance immediately. He had ordered absolute secrecy while commissioning discreet verification from trusted international scientists who had no ties to major powers or corporations. Now the verification was complete, and the world was beginning to know that something extraordinary had been discovered in Burkina Faso. But the exact nature and capabilities of Burkinium remained top secret. The bidding war had begun before any technical specifications had even been released. Mr. President, said Colonel Amara Konait, Traoré's head of security, entering the office after a brief knock. The American delegation has arrived. There, waiting in the diplomatic reception room. Traoré carefully returned the vial to a secure case. And the others? The Chinese will arrive in approximately 1 hour. The EU representatives are scheduled for late afternoon. The Russians have requested to reschedule for tomorrow morning. All according to plan, Traoré nodded. Everyone separated. Everyone. Impatient. The strategy had been deliberate. Schedule the major powers in sequence, never allowing them to coordinate or compare notes. Maintain information asymmetry. Let their competitive instincts drive up their offers, while keeping them uncertain about what exactly their rivals were proposing. As he prepared to meet the American delegation, Traoré reflected on how rapidly events had unfolded just 3 months from discovery to global bidding war. 3 months in which his small team of trusted advisors and scientists had worked around the clock to understand what they had found, to secure the discovery site, and to develop a strategy that would maximize benefits for Burkina Faso. 12 people had seen the element in its raw form or knew its full capabilities. 12 people sworn to absolute secrecy. Operating out of a secure laboratory hastily established beneath the presidential palace. 12 people who understood they were handling something that could transform not just Burkina Faso's future, but the global balance of power. The Americans were waiting in the ornate reception room, a relic of colonial architecture repurposed for the modern Burkina Faso government. The delegation consisted of 3 people: a senior State Department official, a prominent technology entrepreneur who served as a special advisor to the White House on critical minerals, and a renowned material scientist from a national laboratory. Mr. President, the State Department official began after formalities were exchanged. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us regarding this extraordinary discovery. Traoré nodded politely but said nothing. Employing the strategic silence he had learned was often more effective than words in negotiations. The official continued, slightly unsettled by the lack of response. As we've indicated, the United States is prepared to make a substantial offer for exclusive rights to Burkinium. Our latest proposal of $2.7 billion represents not just financial compensation, but a comprehensive package including technological partnership, educational exchange, and defense cooperation. And this figure has been approved at the highest levels. Traoré asked, his voice neutral. Traoré allowed a small smile. So $3.7 billion potentially, a significant sum. He paused deliberately. Though I understand the Chinese initial position began at $1.40 $4 billion, but has since been revised substantially upward. The Americans exchanged glances, taking the bait exactly as anticipated. The State Department official cleared his throat. Mr. President, we would, of course, be willing to reconsider our position if necessary to ensure the strategic resource remains in friendly hands. Perhaps if we could see some documentation of the element's properties, we could better assess its true value. All delegations will receive the same technical briefing materials at the conclusion of these initial meetings, Traoré replied smoothly. For now, I can confirm that Burkinium's properties include room temperature superconductivity and quantum coherence, capabilities beyond anything currently achievable with known elements. The scientist in the delegation couldn't contain her reaction, eyes widening at the implications. If true, those properties alone would justify valuations far beyond what was currently being offered. We'll need to consult with Washington, the State Department official said quickly. Of course, Traoré responded. Though I should mention that we're operating on a compressed timeline. Several parties have expressed interest in moving forward rapidly. The meeting concluded with diplomatic pleasantries, but the message had been sent. The bidding was just beginning, and time was limited. As the American delegation departed, Traoré checked his secure phone for updates. The message from Dr. Wedriogo was concise. Extraction optimization successful. Yield estimates increased. More good news. The initial discovery site was proving even more productive than first assessed. If the current extraction rates could be maintained, Burkina Faso's reserves of Burkinium would be sufficient to maintain a strategic position for decades, not merely years. The subsequent meetings followed a similar pattern. Each delegation offering increasingly generous financial packages technological partnerships, defense agreements, and development aid. Each carefully led to believe they were the preferred partner without any firm commitments. Each departing with the clear impression that time was running short and competitors were circling. Asterisk. But Traoré had no intention of managing this conventionally. Asterisk. Have all the delegates left the country? He asked Colonel Cannon as they entered. The secure elevator that descended to the underground laboratory where the real work was happening. Asterisk. The Americans and Europeans have departed. The Chinese delegation remains but is scheduled to leave tomorrow morning. The Russians arrive at 10, and our other guests are arriving discreetly over the next 48 hours as arranged. All security protocols in place. Asterisk. The elevator doors opened to reveal a state-of-the-art research facility that would have been unimaginable in Burkina Faso just months earlier. Funded from emergency strategic reserves and constructed with remarkable speed, the lab had been built to provide the small team of Burkina Faso scientists with the resources they needed to understand and develop Burkinium's potential. Dr. Araga approached as they entered, her expression animated despite the late hour. Mr. President, we've had another breakthrough. The quantum coherence properties are even more stable than we initially measured. The potential applications for computing are beyond anything currently theorized. Asterisk. Traoré nodded, following her to a workstation where complex simulations displayed the element's molecular behavior. Though not a scientist himself, he had spent countless hours being briefed on the technical aspects of the discovery, understanding that knowledge was leverage. In the unprecedented situation they found themselves in, asterisk, and the security implications? He asked. Asterisk. Dr. Wedriago's expression grew more serious. Confirmed. The element's properties would render current encryption methods obsolete. Whoever controls quantum computing at this scale essentially controls the global information infrastructure. Asterisk. This assessment aligned with what Traoré had already intuited, that Burkinium's value went far beyond mere financial metrics. It represented a fundamental shift in technological capability that would advantage whoever controlled it to an extent not seen since perhaps the development of nuclear technology. Asterisk, which makes our approach all the more critical, he said. Is the presentation for our actual partners prepared? Asterisk. Yes, Mr. President. Full technical specifications, extraction methodologies, and development roadmaps. Everything they'll need to understand both the opportunity and our proposed framework. Asterisk. While the major powers had been engaged in their bidding war, a distraction Traoré had deliberately encouraged, his actual strategy had been taking shape in parallel. A strategy not of selling to the highest bidder, but of creating something far more revolutionary. Asterisk. 2 days later, as Russian and American officials were still awaiting responses to their competing offers, a very different meeting was taking place in the secure conference facility beneath the presidential palace. Asterisk. Around the table sat representatives from 9 nations: Ghana, Senegal, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, Malaysia, Vietnam, Chile, and Uruguay. None were global superpowers. All were developing nations with strong technical capabilities, stable governments, and a shared history of navigating between major power blocks without becoming subservient to any. Asterisk. Thank you for responding so quickly to our invitation. Traoré began, addressing the assembled delegates. What we're about to share with you is known to fewer than 20 people worldwide. Before we proceed, I must ask each of you to confirm your government's commitment to the confidentiality protocols you've already signed. Asterisk. After receiving affirmations from each delegate, Traoré nodded to Dr. Wedreo, who activated the room's advanced presentation system. For the next hour, she provided a comprehensive technical briefing on Burkinium, its properties, potential applications, extraction methodologies, and strategic implications. The presentation included information that had been deliberately withheld from the major powers delegations. As the briefing concluded, the room was filled with a mixture of awe and strategic calculation. The South African representative was the first to speak. "This is beyond extraordinary. You've essentially discovered the holy grail of material science. The major powers must be offering astronomical sums." They are, Traoré confirmed. "The current high bid is $12 billion, and it's likely to go higher." Then, with respect, Mr. President, asked the Chilean representative, "Why? Are we here? Burkina Faso could transform its entire economic future with such resources." Traoré smiled. "Because we believe there's something more valuable than money, something that the major powers cannot or will not offer." He rose, moving to the head of the table. "Throughout history, transformative technologies have emerged: steam power, electricity, nuclear energy, the internet. Each time, these technologies have been controlled by a small number of nations who use that control to extend their global dominance. Each time, developing nations have been forced to either accept technological dependency or remain excluded from progress." He gestured to the molecular models of Burkinium still rotating on the display screens. "This element represents a potential shift in human technological capability as significant as any of those previous revolutions. If controlled by existing power structures, it will simply reinforce the current global hierarchy." "What are you proposing?" asked the Rwandan delegate. "A consortium," Traoré replied. "Equal partnership among our nations to develop Burkinium technology collectively. Shared research, shared applications, shared benefits. No single nation, including Burkina Faso, would have exclusive control or veto power." The room fell silent as the implications of this proposal sank in. What Traoré was suggesting was unprecedented: a technology-sharing agreement that would bypass the major powers entirely and create an independent bloc with capabilities potentially exceeding those of current global leaders. The political pressure would be immense, observed the Vietnamese representative. The major powers would not simply accept being excluded from such technology. True, Traoré acknowledged, which is why our approach must be both strategic and transparent. We're not proposing to weaponize this discovery or to use it against any nation. We're simply asserting our right to develop it outside traditional power structures. And Burkina Faso is prepared to share control of something worth tens of billions? Asked the Malaysian representative skeptically. When you could simply sell to the highest bidder? Traoré's expression grew more serious. What is the true value of technological independence? Of determining our own development path rather than following one prescribed by former colonial powers or new economic hegemons? Some things cannot be measured in dollars or yuan. He paused, looking around the table. Besides, our analysis suggests that the consortium approach will actually generate greater long-term value for all participants, including Burkina Faso. A monopoly sold to America or China would yield a one-time payment. A shared technology platform developed by our consortium could transform all our economies for generations. The discussion continued late into the night, addressing practical questions of financing, security, governance structures, and diplomatic strategy. By morning, the framework of an agreement had taken shape. The Ouagadougou Protocol for Collaborative Technological Development, named after Burkina Faso's capital city. As the delegates departed to consult with their governments, Traoré knew that the most challenging phase was still ahead. The major powers would not react well to being circumvented, especially once they realized the full strategic implications of Burkinium. Economic pressure, political destabilization attempts, and even military threats were all possibilities. His security team had already begun preparing for yet. There was also a sense of profound historical significance to what they were attempting. For perhaps the first time since the colonial era, African and other developing nations had an opportunity to leapfrog existing technological hierarchies, rather than simply following paths established by the global north. 1 week later. As the deadline given to the major powers elapsed without any response to their increasingly generous offers, the first hints of the consortium's existence began to emerge in international diplomatic circles. Unusual patterns of travel among scientific delegations from the 9 prospective member nations, unexplained communication security upgrades, discreet inquiries about advanced research equipment from multiple countries simultaneously.